Before you close your eyes tonight, let me take you on a little journey. Before sunrise, the palace breathes. You wake before dawn in the quiet hum of gyeongbokgung. Robes rustling, tea steaming. The air is still when you wake. Not quiet palaces are never truly silent, but still, like water just before it ripples. You're already sitting up before your thoughts even catch up to your body. Somewhere in the vast stone belly of gyeongbokgung, someone is sweeping. Someone else is lighting a brazier. Your mat is cool against your ankles. Your robe soft but unassuming. And the faint clink of distant dishes reminds you that you are not alone, but you are not exactly seen either. The court lady's day begins long before anyone truly important opens their eyes. You're not a queen, or a royal consort, or even a concubine, but you are here, in the belly of the palace, and that makes you part of its rhythms, its rituals, its sighing pulse. You rise, instinctively folding your sleeping blanket and tucking it away into the wooden chest at the foot of your space. It's not really your room. After all, it's a rotating bunk, a borrowed corner of hierarchy. Every morning is the same, and that's the comfort of it. Predictability, after all, is survival. Outside, the garden paths are still wrapped in pre-dawn mist. You walk slowly toward the bathing hall, carrying your towel and the same ceramic soap dish that's been passed down through 3 seniors. There's no hot water unless you earned it yesterday. And you did not. But the chill is bracing, and you tell yourself this is how strong women are made. Bathing is brief. Not because of modesty, though, yes. There are many eyes and few secrets, but because there's already a line, and the soap smells a little like boiled rice. Your hair is long and will take hours to dry. But that's not your concern. That will be someone else's hands. Someone with a comb made of sandalwood and a lot of unspoken opinions. By the time the sun brushes the roof tiles with gold, you're fully dressed in your daily uniform, a modest hanbok in muted palace colors, never bright enough to draw notice, never dull enough to attract scorn. There are rules. You know all of them. You also know no one will tell you when they change. You'll just find out the hard way. The palace is awakening now, and so are the duties. Some women rush to the kitchens, others to the laundry or the queen's chambers. You are scheduled for chamber duty, which isif, not prestigious, at least dry and warm. It's the kind of assignment where you can practice the art of being precisely helpful without being memorable. Your first task is to fetch tea for your superior, who prefers it lukewarm and brewed, with precisely 3 chrysanthemum petals. No more. No fewer. Last week, someone got demoted over a 4th petal. You are not here to be creative. You are here to get things very slightly right. Over and over again. For years, as you walk the corridor, your slippers whisper over the stone. You think about how far away the outer world must be. The market noise, the smell of grilled fish on the street, the laughter of girls who married shopkeepers instead of imperial ambition. You do not regret your path, but you remember the taste of freedom, like you might remember a dream fuzzy at the edges, but strangely warm. Inside the chamber, incense curls in the air. You bow. Pour. Bow again. The senior lady nods once, and you are invisible again. It is the best possible outcome. Some girls try too hard to be noticed. That's a dangerous game. You, on the other hand, are aiming for longevity, not legend. Historians still argue whether the inner court functioned more like a household or a government. It was both, and neither. An in-between world. You live in a place where emotions are folded into robes, where alliances are stitched into the hem of someone's sleeve, where nothing is ever said outright, but everything has meaning, including where you stand and how you bow. By mid-morning, the palace is fully alive, but you already feel like you've lived a whole life today. There will be no fanfare for it, no diary entry, just one more perfectly average day where you woke before the sun, poured tea without error, and passed by 3 higher-ranking ladies without stepping too loudly. And that, for now, is enough. Ceremonial combing and the hairpin hierarchy. A morning ritual of combs, braids, and status-laden hairpins sets the tone for the day. You're still drying. Technically, your hair. That is, even though your outer appearance is complete, your robe tied with precision, your sleeves rolled to the correct inch below your wrist. The truth is that your hair is still slightly damp at the nape. You don't say anything. You just walk a little slower so it can dry against the morning air. You're headed to the hair room now. That's not its real name, of course, but everyone calls it that. It's the small chamber just off the main courtyard where younger court ladies assist their seniors with one of the most quietly loaded acts of the day, the ceremonial combing. It's not just grooming. It's hierarchy, social order made visible in pins, partings, and coils. You enter, bow slightly, and take your place behind an older woman already seated on the mat. She doesn't greet you. She's not required to. Instead, she closes her eyes, and you begin gently combing through her long black hair with careful, reverent strokes starting at the ends. Always. Then, working upward, untangling the knots without tugging. This woman wears a binyo, a long ornamental hairpin made of silver. That means she ranks somewhere in the mid-tier. Jade binyo is better. Gold. Rare. Tortoiseshell, reserved for the women who serve directly under the queen. And then there are the simpler ones, plain wood or bone. The kind of hairpin you wear when you've just arrived, when you're too new to be worth noticing. You still remember your first pin. You tried not to smile when you received it, but you did. It was a slip of carved birchwood, worn smooth by years of other hands. But it felt like power in your palm. Now, you are the one doing the combing, and soon you'll be the one seated. 2. The combing ritual is accompanied by silence, not out of reverence, but practicality. This is when secrets are accidentally overheard. No one wants to be quoted later, so instead, you focus on the texture of the hair, the curve of the pin as you slide it into place, the way the morning light catches on the lacquered wood floor. Historians still debate whether these grooming rituals stemmed from Confucian ideals of order and modesty, or if they evolved independently from earlier shamanic traditions, where hair was seen as a spiritual antenna. Either way, you know that nothing happens here by accident. Every parting, every curl, every pine each tells a story. Once your task is done, you bow out and begin combing your own hair in a side chamber, guided by a polished bronze mirror. It doesn't reflect you very clearly, more of a ghostly outline, a blur of a girl you almost recognize. You twist your hair into the prescribed shape, not a strand out of place, and slip in your assigned pin. You do it not for beauty, but for what it says. I belong here. I follow the rules. I am safe. In the hallway outside, two junior ladies are whispering behind fans. You catch fragments, something about a concubine's tantrum. Or maybe a spilled inkstone. It doesn't matter. The facts are never as important as the tone. You move on. Quiet. Composed. But already scanning the corridor for your next duty. Not because you're worried, but because court life is a dance. And you don't want to be the one who misses the next step. You pass a lacquered cabinet that holds the extra hairpins. To the emergency, one tucked away in case of breakage or sudden inspection. You glance at them only briefly, and then move on. To linger would be obvious. There is something oddly soothing about the way appearance governs this place. You don't choose your path, but you know exactly where to place your feet. Even in chaos, there's order. That, too, is its own kind of comfort. Out in the yard, a small group of older court ladies are instructing new arrivals on how to bind their sleeves tighter for the day's chores. You remember that lesson. You remember messing it up. Everyone does. You tied yours backward and walked around with your sleeves flapping like laundry for half a day. No one corrected you. Of course, that's how the lesson is taught. You smile faintly at the memory, not because it was funny at the time, but because now you understand. The palace teaches slowly, through embarrassment and repetition, through 1,000 small corrections. As the sun climbs higher, your reflection fades from the bronze mirror. Your hair is now perfectly dry, perfectly in place. The pin catches light and says what you cannot. I am part of this. I know how to be still. And for the rest of the morning, you'll glide through the palace like a breeze, tidy and invisible. Breakfast with porcelain and protocol. You sip millet porridge under the gaze of etiquette, where even spoon angles matter. By the time breakfast arrives, you're already hungry, which is considered very unpoetic of you. Court ladies are supposed to float elegantly through life, not stomach growling their way to the food hall like barn cats. But hunger, it turns out, doesn't care about elegance. You join the single-file procession into the lesser dining chamber, where meals are served with more protocol than flavor. The room is orderly rows of sitting mats, low-lacquered trays, and a sharp awareness that you are being observed. Even when no one is visibly watching, you kneel at your assigned spot. There's no speaking until everyone is seated and the eldest present has lifted her spoon first. This is not just breakfast. It's choreography. It's social math. If you sit too fast, you're seen as over-eager, too slow, and you're deliberately challenging the pace. The correct rhythm is medium. Always medium. Your tray holds a bowl of jus crease porridge today, perhaps mixed with barley or millet. You peer in hopefully. No pine nuts. Ah well. The side dishes are predictable. A small pile of enamel greens, a single slice of pickled radish, and one perfectly square rectangle of pan-fried tofu that always tastes slightly like regret. Still, it's warm, and it fills the space where longing usually lives. You lift your spoon only when the signal is given. No chopsticks for breakfast. It's considered uncouth this early. You sip quietly, eyes down, occasionally glancing up only to ensure your posture matches the others. Shoulders low, elbows tucked. You are both eating and performing. Historians still argue whether palace meals were truly as Spartan for court ladies as the records suggest. Some say simplicity was imposed to discourage vanity or gluttony. Others believe the more lavish records have simply not survived. You suspect the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like everything else here, halfway through the meal, you pause spoon mid-air. The woman across from you just rearranged her tray. A subtle thing, but that tells you she's nervous. Rearranging means distraction. Distraction means something's happening. You keep eating as if you noticed nothing, but your mind is now churning. You finish slowly, making sure not to be first or last. The trick is always to blend into the midline. It's safer there. After the meal, trays are collected in near silence. One girl accidentally drops her spoon, and the clatter echoes unnaturally loud. Everyone freezes for half a breath. No one comments. But the girl will find extra laundry waiting for her tomorrow. Maybe for the rest of the week. As you rise, your robe catches slightly on the corner of the mat. You tug it free carefully. No sudden movements. Nothing that calls attention. Outside the dining chamber, the air feels cooler. A breeze from the garden creeps through the window slats and stirs the edge of your sleeve. You allow yourself one deep breath slow. Steady and then exhale it like a secret. Next to you, another lady murmurs about the Queen Dowager's rumored appetite, how she once refused all food but pear slices for 3 days. You smile faintly, not at the gossip, but at how quickly it's dressed in reverence. Your next duty is delayed. Briefly, a rare window of time opens, maybe 20 minutes. Maybe less, where you are not expected anywhere. Not yet. These are the dangerous moments. Freedom, however tiny, has consequences. You walk toward the covered walkway that leads to the embroidery hall, just to look busy. Your feet know this path. You've traced it 1,000 times. You pass a chamber where a few court ladies are re-inking their brows with soot-dipped brushes. Another where someone is arranging stacks of porcelain teacups by dynasty. Everything in its place. Everyone pretending to be more important than they feel. You reach a window, half open. Outside, in the lower courtyard, the kitchen ladies are setting up for the midday meal. The smoke from the hearth coils upward, carrying the faint scent of garlic, wood ash, and roasted sesame. You wonder what it would be like to work there instead. To stir soup and joke loudly and get scolded for clattering pots instead of misplacing honorifics. But then again, they don't get combed with sandalwood. You turn away before anyone catches you, lingering. By now, the hallways are beginning to buzz again. A bell rings from the Queen's wing. Your quay. The day is tightening its grip once more. You smooth your robe and re-enter the current of palace life, slipping back into the practiced quiet of someone who's eaten, watched, waited, and is ready to be invisible again. Scrolls, stitching, and secret scripts. In the weaving rooms, you decipher poems sewn into silk that no one is supposed to read. Your steps are soft as you approach the weaving chamber, softer than necessary. But part of the ritual, no one stomps in the embroidery halls. It's a sanctuary of silk, thread, and very pointed silence. The room smells faintly of starch and crushed blossoms, an odd but familiar blend. You enter just as the bell chimes its third note, perfect timing. Early would have made you look overeager. Late would have meant a week of scrubbing floor panels. Again, you bow to the head embroiderer, who doesn't look up, but flicks 2 fingers toward the leftmost cushion. That's yours. You settle onto the mat, careful not to wrinkle your sleeves, and reach for your frame. Today, you're working on a robe, panel mountains. cranes, and swirling clouds in painstaking detail. The threads are finer than spider silk, and the pattern must be followed exactly. Unless you enjoy being unpicked for hours while everyone pretends not to judge you, you begin to stitch, one slow movement at a time. In, pull, loop, out, tighten. The quiet here isn't empty. It's concentrated. The only sounds are the faint rustle of fabric, the occasional cough, and the hum of 1,000 unsaid thoughts. Someone to your right is embroidering plum blossoms. You glance over. Subtly. Her shading is lovely. Too lovely. Dangerous. Even. Drawing attention with beauty can make you memorable, and being memorable rarely ends well here. Still, you admire the way she blends two thread tones. Maybe you'll try it tomorrow, quietly, without letting it be traced back to her. Historians still debate whether court embroidery was strictly ceremonial, or if these items were ever used by royalty at all. Some records suggest the finer pieces were sent as diplomatic gifts, never actually worn. Others hint that the Queen herself once rejected a robe for being too symmetrical. Though that may just be the sort of tale that helps a seamstress sleep at night. As you stitch, your fingers begin to settle into a rhythm. It's meditative, in its own way. You have to focus just enough to keep your mind from drifting, but not so much that you forget to breathe. You remember learning to sew. You pricked yourself 8 times in a single hour and bled on the hem of a mock robe. They made you finish anyway, even though the stain could never be removed. The lesson: mistakes are permanent. So are your consequences. You smile to yourself. You haven't bled on anything in months. Across the chamber, someone coughs, and another woman drops a spool of blue thread. It rolls halfway across the floor, and the collective inhale is nearly audible. She retrieves it silently and boasts, "We set her, the head embroiderer." A ritual apology for a disturbance. The day grows warmer, and a shaft of light sneaks in through the paper window, falling directly on your needle. It glints softly, a reminder that beauty exists even here, even in monotony, even in the 6th hour of sewing clouds. Suddenly, the woman next to you nudges your elbow, not enough to be reprimanded, just enough to pass you a folded scrap of silk. Tucked into its corner is a tiny stitched symbol, a goose in flight. You blink. It's a message, not a dangerous one, not even a gossip-laden one, just a tiny, shared joke. She stitched it during lunch break, probably, and risked being seen. The goose is a reference to a story told yesterday about a minor official who tried to smuggle roast goose into the palace, tucked inside his robes. It didn't end well for the goose, or the robe. You don't react outwardly, but your stitches grow smoother. There is something about shared laughter, even silent, sideways laughter, that makes the thread glide easier. The head embroiderer calls for tea, and a few girls rotate out to serve. You stay. You prefer the stitching to the formality of pouring. Your current section is nearly done. 2 more cranes and a corner of mist. The cranes are particularly delicate. Their necks always look like they're on the verge of disapproval. You try to give yours a slightly kinder tilt. Maybe no one will notice. Sometimes, you wonder if these robes remember you. If someone in a far-off court wears a panel you stitched and feels vogue, a sense of patience sewn into the threads, or a smile that doesn't quite belong to them. Probably not. But the thought keeps you steady. The bell chimes again. The morning stitching session is over. You roll your frame gently. Wrap your threads and bow to the head embroiderer. She nods once, which in this world is a thunderous compliment. As you rise, your legs are a bit stiff. You stretch subtle, being the only kind of stretch allowed, and walk out of the room with quiet satisfaction. Not because you finished. You never finish. But because today, the clouds came out well. And because somewhere in a hidden fold of silk, a goose still flies. When the Queen calls, you glide. One summons from Her Majesty turns you from invisible to indispensable temporarily. The Queen calls, not to you, of course, but through someone who outranks you by at least 3 ceremonial hairpins and 1 foot of floor space. Still, when the Queen calls 7, indirectly you glide. You don't rush. Rushing is for the desperate and the guilty. You simply move a little faster while appearing to remain perfectly calm. That's an art form in itself. The summons isn't personal. Though for a moment, your stomach still flips. The Queen doesn't tend to remember names unless those names have attached scandals. You, blessedly, are forgettable, useful, discreet. You report to her reception chamber, bowing 3 times before entering. The air inside is scented faintly with peony water and old incense. Everything here seems quieter than necessary, as if even the silk cushions have learned to hush themselves in her presence. Her Majesty does not look up right away. She is reading or pretending to. Depending on the kind of day she's having, you keep your eyes respectfully lowered. Your job here is to assist, observe, and, above all, not exist too loudly. She gestures with 2 fingers. That means cushions. You move silently to adjust them behind her seat, smoothing the creases in a way that feels both intimate and invisible. Then she speaks. Too many birds on the curtain. She murmurs. It's not a request. It's a critique of the new embroidered hangings recently installed. You resist the urge to defend your fellow embroiderers. Instead, you murmur. Shall I arrange for them to be adjusted? Your Majesty? She waves a hand. Distracted. Already moved on. Now her interest shifts to a tea service being brought in. You step back into the wall of courtiers and assistants who act like shadows with excellent posture. Historians still puzzle over the exact roles of court ladies in royal households like Joseon Korea's. Were they simply servants? Were they minor officials? Or something else? Entirely half-visible extensions of power? The truth, of course, is both more boring and more complicated. You are everything and nothing, all at once. Today, your task is to assist during the Queen's private audience with a Buddhist nun from one of the mountain temples. You are to observe, bhakti, adjust robes, refill incense, and translate small silences when they become too long. The nun arrives, cloaked in modesty, her shaved head gleaming faintly in the morning light. She speaks softly but directly. The Queen listens, her face unreadable. You pour tea when cued. The Queen does not drink it. The nun does. The discussion turns to offerings for the temple satin bolts, rice bundles, and whether the apricot trees in the outer garden have bloomed early this year. They have. You know, because you walked past them this morning and felt absurdly emotional about the petals falling into a water basin. But you do not offer this opinion. You are here, again, not to be wise, but to be reliable. Still, the nun glances at you once just, a flicker, and smiles. Not with pity, with recognition, as though she sees what you do here, and how long you've done it. It's gone in a second, but it anchors you. The queen dismisses the meeting with a graceful flick of her sleeve. The nun bows, then glides out, her sandals whispering over the polished floors like soft wind. And then you are alone with Her Majesty. For precisely 4 seconds, she does not look at you. She says, "That tea was too cool." You bow deeply. "I will inform the kitchens." "Your Majesty." Will you, perhaps? Or perhaps you'll wait until someone else earns her irritation. Today is not the day to bring more birds, more cold tea, more errors to her notice. You tidy the cushions once more, adjust the curtain, then back out with 3 bows, never turning your back. Outside the chamber, your shoulders lower a bit. That's the thing about royal summons. They feel like both disaster and promotion at the same time. You survived. You were useful. You will not be remembered. All of these are good outcomes. Still, there's an odd pleasure in having stood in the Queen's presence. Not for power, not even for favor, but for the quiet knowledge that, just for a moment, you were the steady pair of hands the palace trusted to keep things from unraveling. And that, in its own small, careful way, is something close to pride. The court's hidden schoolhouse. You learn letters and music in tucked-away chambers, somewhere between duty and distraction. You've just finished smoothing the last wrinkle from the Queen's silk drapery when a junior attendant approaches with a bow so low you momentarily fear for her vertebrae. She whispers the next assignment, tutoring chamber. You suppress a sigh, not because you dislike it, but because teaching in the palace is rarely about actual learning. It's more like ceremonial knowledge, delivered in low voices and perfect posture. Inside a chamber that smells faintly of old parchment and inkstone. Still, there's something comforting about the order of it. You make your way through a covered hallway, the paper windows casting lattice-like shadows across your robes. The tutoring room is not large, but it's elegant in that subtle, highly calculated way. The court excels at brushed silk scrolls, scroll racks, a few calligraphy brushes that never seem to have ink stains, and one stubborn bamboo plant that refuses to grow properly, despite years of whispered coaxing. You kneel beside the table and wait. A few others arrive, ladies in training who are technically younger but might be older in wit. They carry their waxed paper notebooks like offerings. You give them a slow nod. The instructor today is Lady Jean, who smells faintly of camphor and respectability. She clears her throat and gestures to the lesson scroll, a Confucian poem about filial piety that none of you will ever quote aloud but must memorize to the syllable. You begin tracing the first line in your practice book. The brush is too soft, the ink too watery. You make it work anyway. You always do. Correct the angle of your wrist. Lady Hygiene murmurs as she passes. You do so instantly. It's not a rebuke. It's an invitation to improve. In palace terms, that's practically affection. Historians still argue whether these court tutoring sessions were genuine opportunities for women's education or just decorative, gesturisa way to appear enlightened without actually disrupting the status quo. What's certain is this: you are learning, even if no one expects you to use what you know. Today's bonus topic is music theory, specifically the gayagium, a zither-like instrument with 12 strings and infinite ways to disappoint your elders. You do not play well, but you pluck softly and pretend you might someday understand why the third string always sounds slightly mournful. Lady Hyejin allows each of you a turn. One girl plays too quickly, another too slowly. You manage a rhythm that doesn't offend the silence. That's all that's required. After music, there's reading. Not novellas, those are rare and technically discouraged, but parables and etiquette manuals. You read aloud, slowly, savoring the brushstrokes of each hanja character like they are tiny. Silent bells. One paragraph about how to serve melon politely, another about how to mourn without stealing attention from the deceased. You exchange a glance with the girl beside you. She is new and blinking far too often. She is trying not to cry from the pressure. You angle your practice book slightly so she can copy your characters. You pretend not to notice when she does. She'll remember it. That kind of thing circulates slowly in the palace. Like warmth in winter. You break briefly for barley tea. The room fills with the soft clink of cups and the polite pretense that everyone is enjoying the lesson. You actually are. Learning makes you feel temporarily like a person and not just a background ornament in the long procession of the day. One of the bolder girls asks about a myth, something about a fox spirit disguised as a scholar. Lady Hyejin indulges her with a short tale. It's whimsical and mildly unsettling. But you like it. There's something honest about a creature who changes shape, but always leaves behind a clue. The lesson ends with a brief recitation. You pass. Barely. The new girl forgets a line but is gently corrected instead of punished. That's rare. Maybe the season is turning. Maybe Lady Hyejin is just in a generous mood. When you rise, your legs are a bit numb, but your heart feels oddly clear. You've spent the last hour in the quiet absorption of ideas. They may never leave this room, but they shape you anyway. Outside, the day has shifted slightly. The breeze is warmer. A few petals from the cherry tree drift down like sleepy confetti. You pause just long enough to let one catch on your sleeve before flicking it away. Your next task awaits. Of course, it always does. But for now, you've spent an hour learning. Not for a man, not for a test, just for the silent thrill of knowing something today you didn't know yesterday. And in the palace, that's as close to freedom as you get. Gossip in the lotus garden, while tending lilies. You trade coded rumors about eunuchs, ghosts, and maybe the crown prince. You're sent to the gardens next, not for leisure, of course, but for floral assistance, which is code for go water the lilies while the noble ladies pretend not to notice you're there. You accept the assignment with a bow so graceful it could serve as punctuation. The royal lotus garden isn't large, but it feels endless when you're inside it. Walled in with carved stone, shaded by delicate pines, and trimmed with paths too narrow to walk beside someone else. That's deliberity. Everything in the palace is engineered to maintain space, no just physical space, but social distance. If people can't walk side by side, they can't whisper. You arrive with your bucket, your ladle, and your carefully folded smile. Several other court ladies are already scattered among the stones, trimming, adjusting, or pretending to examine a leaf for signs of imperial disapproval. The lilies are doing well. The gardener's been diligent. All you really have to do is ladle water gently into the carved stone basins. But even this is not simple. The queen prefers a specific water pattern counterclockwise. Slow, pour, no splashing. You oublie. You always do. As you move from basin to basin, you overhear snippets of conversation. Not loud, never direct, but suggestive. The concubine from Giola wore red yesterday. Hi. She wasn't supposed to. Not until I heard the Crown Prince's falcon escaped again. Load. Or was released. Maybe it followed the same route as the last lady in waiting who spilled ink on the royal decree. These aren't accusations. These are lullabies. In the palace, gossip is the only way some people stay awake. You add nothing, but you listen. That's the real art of survival, collecting information without anyone realizing you're building a collection. Historians still debate how much agency court ladies truly had. Some insist they were pawns. Others argue they wielded quiet power, shaping royal opinion through invisible influence. You're not sure either is entirely true. You feel less like a pawn and more like the game board walked on, moved across. Essential but rarely seen. As you ladle water into the final basin, a toad appears near the edge. You freeze. In some parts of the palace, that's considered a good omen. In others, a sign of bad tidings. You glance around to see if anyone else noticed. A senior attendant catches your eye and gives the tiniest shrug. Interpret as you like. You bow politely to the toad. Just in case. You've done your rounds and are preparing to return the tools when one of the noblewomen waves you over. She's seated beneath a pavilion, half hidden behind a silk fan, and radiating the kind of boredom that often leads to mischief. You approach with the careful poise of someone hoping not to be turned into entertainment. She doesn't even lower her fan. Tell me, she says languidly, do the lilies look better this week? Or last? You think carefully. This is not a question about flowers. You offer the safest answer. They always look best when you are near them. Lady. She laughs a soft, pleased sound. Good answer. But they were better last week. She waves you away before you can reply. You bow, step back, and turn without rushing. You've passed the test. Today, in the shade of the walkway, you finally allow yourself a real breath. The kind that expands your lungs past survival and into something dangerously close to peace. As you return your ladle and cloth to the utility alcove, you pose. On the wooden shelf sits a forgotten fan. It's painted with cranes, 3 of them, all flying in different directions. The symbolism is messy. That makes it interesting. You leave it there. Of course, nothing in the palace truly belongs to you. But for a moment, you allow yourself the fantasy that it does. That you once danced in the garden, fen in hunt, laughter real, sleeve loose, hair uncombed. But then the bell chimes, and you're a court lady again. You bow to the garden, and you go. Perfumed letters and paper fans. You fold paper just right to convey affection or defiance without breaking a single rule. You're summoned next to the paper chamber. That's what it's called, not officially. Of course, officially, it's the correspondence room. But everyone calls it the paper chamber because everything in it smells like rice paste, ink, and secrets. Your task? Folding. Not clothes. Not napkins. Paper. Specifically, fine hanjitha, mulberry bark paper prized throughout the palace for its durability, flexibility, and barely their scent. It arrives in thick stacks, each sheet smooth as breath and stubborn as etiquette. Today's order: 60 message squares and 20 fan inserts. No creases, no fingerprints, and above all, no mistakes. You settle onto the mat with a stack in front of you. sleeves tied back. Posture alert. The room is cool and shaded, with only one high window, letting in the sort of light that flatters no one and shows every wrinkle. You begin folding. Fold 1, diagonal crease. Fold 2, triangle to center. Fold 3, a twist at the edge to imply elegance but never urgency. It's absurd how much personality is packed into these folds. Courtiers train for years in the art of non-verbal messaging. One bent corner, affection. A slightly thicker base, displeasure. A sprig of lavender tucked into the seal, apology. Usually too late. You fold with care. Each square becomes a whisper, a suggestion, a smile or slap tucked in wax. Historians still argue whether palace messaging was truly coded, or if later storytellers invented the symbolism. You suspect both are true. The symbols matter less than the shared understanding of them. Power, after all, lives in implication. Midway through the stack, someone brushed past you. It's a junior letter runner, barely old enough to keep her shoes on straight. She drops a note by your elbow, intentionally. Maybe, or not. It's unsealed. You glance at it. Just once. The handwriting is elegant. The message reads, "It is too soon to ask." But the fan was beautiful. You fold it back precisely as it was. The best secrets are the ones you don't tell anyone you read. You tuck the finished stack of folded message squares into a silk-lined tray and hand them off without fanfare. Someone else will add the seals. Someone else will deliver them. You are just the bridge. Next comes the fan work. These are more complicated. A full fan requires delicate paper folding and a little art, not drawing. Of course, just arranging a few pre-painted blossoms across the spread so that, when opened, the effect is graceful, but never too vivid. It must look like it's trying not to be noticed while desperately hoping it will be. You open one pre-painted fan insert. It's been brushed with plum blossoms' faint pink dots on a crooked branch. A clever nod to aging beauty, or lost love, depending on who reads it. You fold carefully. The blossoms distort slightly, like memories seen through tears. It's almost poetic. To your left, another lady snorts softly as she folds a fan bearing pine trees. "Stiff little sticks," she mutters. "Too low for a reprimand. This one's going to the minister's wife." Serves her right. Oh, you smile. Just barely. You're not supposed to laugh here. But a little mischief, it keeps your hands from cramping. You finish your final fan and lay it beside the others. The folds are crisp, the ink undisturbed, and not a single corner is smudged. You sit back for a moment, letting your hands rest in your lap. A breeze slips in from the window and ruffles the edge of your skirt. Outside, somewhere, a bird calls, one of those quick, insistent cries that seem to say something urgent in a language you'll never learn. You rise, bow to the head of the paper chamber, and glide out into the hallway once again. And as you walk, you wonder who will open the fan you just folded. Will it flutter open in the Queen's hand? Be passed from lady to lady in a game of flirtation so subtle no one dares admit it's happening? Or will it be dismissed entirely, folded up and forgotten on a painted windowsill? You'll never know. But somewhere, in someone's hands, your quiet little fold of plum blossoms might bloom again. And in this place, that's as close to a legacy as you dare to hope for. The long, quiet tedium of embroidery. Your needle draws mountains and clouds, while the hours pass like distant drums. You're sent next to embroidery again, but not for stitching. This time, you're assigned the less glamorous, more meditative task of thread prep. That means sorting skeins, untangling knots, and trimming silk into strands fine enough to pass through needles thinner than truth in court gossip. The needlework room is quieter now. Afternoon light slides lazily down the walls, making long shadows of the spools and frames. It's the slowest time of day, the lull between the duties you've survived and the ones still lurking around the corner. You sit cross-legged on your mat, combing your fingers gently through a skein of cloud-grey silk. The thread catches on a rough nail. You file it silently with the small pumice stone. Everyone keeps tucked in their sleeve, hem, for just this purpose. It's in these hours that the tedium truly begins to sing. You pull the threads slowly, winding them around a gourd-shaped bobbin with the kind of patience most people reserve for watching. Tea, cool. And in the rhythm of it, wind. Twist. Pinch. Breathe you. Find a kind of fragile peace. Around you, a few other ladies are engaged in similar acts of textile repetition. One hums quietly. Another yawns and pretends she didn't. A third is mouthing a poem under her breath, something about migrating birds and longing. You know the one. Everyone knows the one. It gets whispered into sleeves like a coded spell. Historians still debate whether embroidery halls were meant for productivity or reflection. Some argue they were simply labor centers. Others insist they served as a rare emotional refuge where hands moved automatically and minds were free to roam. You suspect the answer is both. This place hums with memory, and no two women remember it quite the same. Once your thread is sorted, you're asked to assist with an unfinished robe border, pine trees with fog curling at their roots, and a line of distant mountains. Your job is simple cloudwork, white-on-white embroidery, almost invisible. It's slow going, but that's the point. Each stitch is a breath, a lull, a whispered wish to be left in peace. As you work, you notice a small faded marking in the corner of the fabric, a single stitch in gold thread, hidden between layers. It's not part of the design. Someone added it long ago. A signature, maybe, or a message. You lean in closer. It looks like a character, possibly dream. You don't touch it, but you feel the weight of it. A message sent through time by someone who also sat on this mat, bent over this fabric, aching quietly in the same place between the shoulder blades. You return to your work with a soft smile. Later, when you go to rinse your hand, silk oils ruin the thread. After all, you catch your reflection in the basin's water. You look tired, but intact. You dip your fingers in. The water is cold. It wakes you a little. You dry your hands on the linen towel, return to the mat, and continue stitching until the bell chimes. Cloud after cloud, curve after curve. Your needle floats through the silk, and in that tiny space between stitches, you feel like maybe, just maybe, you're part of something that will outlast you. Midday tea, served with silence. You practice the ancient art of sitting very still while not looking directly at anyone. By now, the sun is beginning its slow lean westward, casting the palace corridors in buttery gold. Shadows stretch. Footsteps echo longer. It's the part of the day where everything softens except protocol. You're summoned once more. This time, midday tea service. Not for the queen. That's handled by the elite. This is for the mid-ranking ladies in the Hall of Rectitudian. Odd name for a place where everyone gossips politely over barley biscuits. Still, it's a keta duty, one that lets you move slowly, reverently, and above all, unbothered. You approach the chamber with a lacquered tray balanced on your palms. 5 cups. 5 ceramic lids. A teapot shaped like a gourd and painted with cranes. The scent of roasted barley and dried persimmon lingers in the steam. Warm and familiar. The door opens without creak. Someone oiled the hinges properly this week. A small triumph. Inside, the ladies are seated in a neat row. Fans tucked under arms. Posture impeccable. You kneel. Bow once. Then begin the service. Tea in the palace isn't just a beverage. It's a pause, a breath, a moment to practice grace in miniature. Pour. Rotate. Lid gently placed. You serve each cup without meeting eyes. Respect, not avoidance. One woman hums a lullaby under her breath. Another stifles a sneeze and then apologizes as though she has committed treason. You take your place along the wall, folding yourself neatly into the background, a tray on your lap in case of refills. This is your chance to listen. The minister's daughter fainted during her first bow. 3 cushions too high. I heard her corset was imported. Foreign fashions, so reckless. Reckless and tight. One murmurs. To a smattering of restrained chuckles, you smile with your eyes only. It's the safest way to do it. Midway through the service, someone spills a drop. Just one. It beads on the mat like shame made liquid. You glide forward, blot it with a folded cloth, and retreat. No sound, no fuss. This is considered perfect execution. Historians still debate whether these tea services were meant to reinforce hierarchy or provide brief spaces for relaxation. You know the answer, yes. It's both a paradox, steeped like the tea itself. Your fingers rest gently on the edge of the tray. Your shoulders ache in that special way that means you've carried just enough tension all day to forget how to let it go. One of the women begins a poem, recited as though she's just remembered it, though clearly she rehearsed. You recognize the opening line. In the cup's pale rim, the sky finds a twin. Well, it's a classic overused, a little too pleased with itself, but still beautiful. Someone sighs appreciatively. The line settles into the silence like a warm stone. A lady beside the speaker tilts her fan just enough to whisper, "Too much sky. Needs more river." She's not wrong. You remain still. That's your role, like the tray. You are here to support, without tipping. But inside, you let yourself compose your own stanza. Silently, in steam's slow dance. I vanish for a breath. No one notices. You'll never say it aloud. That would be a breach. But it lingers on the back of your tongue anyway. Eventually, the final cup is drained. The final compliment paid. The women rise. You do, too, clearing the tray with the same silent reverence that carried it in. Back in the kitchen corridor, you set it down and exhale. A long breath. One of the good ones. You glance outside. The sky has turned the color of persimmon skins. Somewhere, a bird scolds another bird with loud insistence. The world is shifting again. You have 15 minutes of unscheduled time before the next call. You walk slowly, trayless, roll-less, back toward the quieter halls. And for those 15 minutes, you do something rare. You simply exist. Animal omens and moon phase chores. Lunar calendars, Dictate your chores. And a misbehaving cat might mean a royal shift. When the moon is a sliver and the shadows stretch like silk ribbons across the tiled courtyard, your duty turns stranger. You've been assigned the lunar chore list. It changes every few days, guided not by whim or hierarchy, but by a moon phase calendar written in script so old only 3 women in the entire palace can read it without squinting. Tonight, it's waxing crescent, which means sweep the eastern walkway, inspect the candle stores, and curiously check for unusual animal behavior. You don't question it. The palace believes in patterns, and the moon governs everything from tide to temperament. Some say the queen won't eat fermented bean paste during full moons. Others insist cats in the palace are direct descendants of Goryeo temple guardians. Tonight, you're not here to argue. You're here to observe. You begin with the walkways weeping gently beneath the paper lanterns, careful not to disturb the tiny lizards that dart across the stones like scaled rumors. Your broom moves in slow arcs, more ceremonial than practical. From one of the windows above, faint music drifts out. Someone's playing the Hagium 2 strings and 1,000 years of melancholy. You don't know the tune, but it coils around your ribs anyway. Next is the candle storehouse. You carry a small wooden lamp and descend into the cool, resin-scented chamber. Here, candles are stacked like scrollsome wrapped in waxed linen. Others coated in herbs to keep insects away. You take inventory silently, whispering the counts to yourself. Red wax, 6. White taper, 9. Cinnamon oil, 1/2 jar. Sticky, 1 candle slightly bent. Possibly offended. Historians still argue whether these moon-based tasks were rooted in superstition or science. Some records suggest they helped balance labor across the month. Others hint that the moon served as a kind of celestial clock in a world where few had access to timekeeping devices. You think it's a little of both. Next, you venture toward the inner garden. The final task: observe the animals. That's the phrase written on the assignment slip. No further detail. You begin with the cats. 3 palace cats are officially registered. 2 grey. 1 cream. The cream one named Sura. Allegedly, after a beloved dish of royal stew sits on a windowsill, watching you with the kind of judgment only a well-fed feline can afford. You bow. Slightly. She does not bow back, but she doesn't flee either, which is a win. Nearby, a frog croaks once, deeply, then goes silent. You turn your head. Nothing else moves. You continue walking the perimeter, looking for anything that might count as unusual. A bird out too late, a cicada stammering out of season, but all is still. Then, near the corner by the bamboo grove, you see it, a single white feather, floating gently to the ground. No bird in sight, just the feather, pristine and soft as a whispered insult. You pick it up and tuck it into your sleeve. A keepsake? Maybe, or maybe evidence. If someone asks what the moon revealed, your route takes you past the well, where you pause a note because you're thirsty, but because tradition says you're supposed to toss in a thought, not a wish, a thought. So you think, let me keep walking quietly. And the water doesn't answer, but that feels like agreement. You return to the inner chambers, just as the gongs begin to mark the hour. The moon hangs slightly higher now, casting a pale glow over the rooftops. It makes everything look softer, even the rules. You deliver your report, walkway swept. Candles accounted for. No animal disruptions. Except perhaps an unusually serene cat and a single suspicious feather. The supervisor nods once. And that's the end of it. As you walk away, you run your fingers over the feather through your sleeve. Its shape hidden but real. And you wonder just briefly if the moon noticed you tonight. Preparing the evening hanbok. You dress someone else for dinner, a slow ritual involving sleeves, sighs, and silent judgments. Night approaches. But your day is far from over. Now comes one of the most delicate tasks, preparing the evening hanbok. Not yours. You've worn the same muted robe all day and will sleep in it. 2. Unless it earns a mysterious stain between now and bedtime. No. This hanbok is for someone important. Not the queen herself, but someone close. A high-ranking consort. Or perhaps one of the royal aunts who insists on being called Her Grace, even when sneezing. You collect the garments carefully from the dressing hall. They arrive folded, but not yet arranged, like a poem with no line breaks. Your job is to compose it, gracefully, invisibly. You lay the underskirt out first, then the main skirt, the chima, a sweeping expanse of deep garnet silk, heavy as memory. The giogori, or jacket, comes next, pale blue, embroidered with peach blossoms that shimmer faintly in lamplight. Someone stitched those by hand. Possibly you, possibly not. There's no label. There never is. Every fold must fall precisely. Every ribbon must be tied in a knot that looks accidental and effortless, but is neither. You breathe slower as you work. Some court ladies detest this task. Too much pressure. Too many eyes on the final product. But you enjoy it. The rhythm, the calm, the feeling that, for one moment, you're shaping how someone else feels about their evening. You press the sleeves gently with your palms, smoothing imaginary creases. Then add the accessories, a hair ribbon, soft leona socks, and an outer wrap of thin cotton scented faintly with camellia oil. There's also the perfume pouch tied at the waist, hidden beneath the skirt layers. This one is stitched with a lotus. You recognize the pattern. It was assigned for serene appearances. Though everyone knows the wearer has a temper like a startled ox, you arrange it anyway. Appearances are everything. Historians still argue whether court dress held symbolic power beyond aesthetics. Colors meant ranks. Yes, but what about fabric textures, or the flowers embroidered under the arms? Never meant to be seen? You've heard whispers that certain motifs were like coded armor, bamboo for resilience, waves for patience, plum blossoms for surviving winter without breaking. You once stitched a hanbok that bore phoenixes under the collarite against the throat. The lady who wore it laughed too loudly that day and was reassigned to the outer gardens the next week. You don't think it was your fault, but you never stitched another phoenix. Now, the garment is complete. You rise slowly, joints quietly protesting. You carry the hanbok into the dressing room, where a senior attendant is waiting. She eyes your work, nods once, and takes it without comment. That's as good as praise gets. As you leave, another court lady enters, preparing the hair station combs, pins, and a tiny dish of powdered jade for smoothing flyaways. The room begins to buzz with the low hum of pre-dinner preparation. You walk out into the hallway just as a bell chimes faintly from the central courtyard. That's your cue to clear the linen trays, refill the candle holders, and avoid the royal steward. If possible, he's been unusually twitchy this week. But before you do, you pose. The hanbok, elegant, so carefully prepared, will be worn, admired, possibly complimented, and then discarded into a lacquered box until the next rotation. All your effort, all your care, folded and forgotten. But for a moment, it was art. And that's something. You stretch your fingers as you walk. They smell faintly of camellia and dust. And you think, not without humor, you may be invisible, but your seams are everywhere. Shadow lessons, with the shaman's aid. Nightfall brings lessons in charms, dreams, and the art of not asking questions. The sky has turned to indigo by now, a deep and quiet blue that makes the palace lanterns seem warmer than they really are. This is when everything softens just enough to allow for things that aren't quite official. You've been called to assist in the side corridor near the ancestral hall. Not for ceremony. That happens earlier. No. This is for something whispered, a lesson. One that's not on any scroll. You know the signs. Akied room. A junior attendant stationed outside, pretending she's guarding an empty chamber. And inside, just past the second screen door, someone waits with a set of small silk pouches and an odd collection of wooden tokens. You step inside, bowing carefully. It's the shaman's aide, Mistress Cho. Not a court lady. Not kaita servant. She floats in that rare, untouchable space in palace life where no one's sure what her rank is. But everyone listens when she speaks. Tonight, she's teaching shadow charms. You sit cross-legged, hands resting on your knees, and listen. No brush, no ink, just your ears and whatever you're brave enough to remember later. She holds up a tiny pouch, stitched with symbols so old they might be decorative. Hors d'injure. This, she says, is for keeping nightmares away from infants. Not for you. Your nightmares have teeth. Izzy? You nod. That tracks. She teaches you how to tie 5 knots in red thread, how to place a comb under your sleeping mat to confuse spiteful spirits, how to draw a symbol in the air with your pinky finger and then pretend you never did it. You don't ask questions. That's not how this works. Historians still debate whether court shamans held actual authority or simply operated in the margins of official belief. Were they respected, feared, tolerated, or all three, depending on who needed what and when? Tonight, Mistress Cho speaks as if none of that matters. Truth is like steam, it rises, condenses, and disappears before anyone can pin it down. She places one of the wooden tokens in your palm. It's warm, though her fingers are cold. Keep this by your basin, she says. It will make your hair fall straight, not restless. 1. You have no idea what that means, but you bow anyway, and slip the token into your sleeve. Before she dismisses you, she asks, almost casually, what do you dream of when no one's asking? You don't answer. That's not how this works either. You bow again, deeper this time, and step back into the hallway. The junior attendant outside raises an eyebrow just slightly. You return the look with one that says, nothing happened. Nothing ever happens. Let's keep it that way. As you return to the main wing, the palace is quiet in the strange way that only nighttime brings. Not empty, just waiting. You pass a window and catch your reflection, soft, indistinct, moving. You look a little older than you did this morning. That might just be the candlelight. The charm token presses gently against your ribs. You don't know if it works. You don't care. The act of believing is its own kind of protection. And in a place where the walls are full of listening, you've learned when not to speak and when to let a charm do the talking. Final rounds, lamps, locks, and lingered steps. You make your last rounds, checking lanterns and counting soft footsteps in echoing halls. You're nearly at the end of the day. And yet the palace still has demands. Before you sleep, before anyone sleeps, there's one last duty, the final rounds. It sounds official, but it's not. You're not guarding anything. You're not checking scrolls or counting gold. You're walking, quietly, carefully, through the lesser-used halls, the lantern-lit corners, the overlooked in-betweens of palace life. Your hand holds a small wooden lantern, its candle barely flickering. The shadows it casts stretch long on the rice paper walls, like echoes of footsteps that haven't happened yet. You begin at the east corridor. The floor creaks once. You note it. Someone will report it later, and a carpenter will fix it, unless someone more senior walks over it without noticing, in which case, the creak will remain for another season. You pass the window near the library and pause. The wind has shifted the curtain an inch to the left. You tuck it back into place. This, too, is duty. At the corner of the women's quarters, you glance into the laundry chamber. The basins are stacked, the water drained. Someone left a single sock behind folded. As if intentional, you leave it. Some things don't want to be corrected. You check the lamps, 14 in total. Most still burning gently. 2 are out. You light them again, slowly, letting the flame bloom up like a yawn. Outside, in the garden, moonlight spreads silver over the pond. The koi do not stir. Even they are tired. As you move through the silent rooms, you notice the small things: a comb misplaced by a sleepy attendant, a ribbon tied in haste, a slipper askew beside a door. You fix each one, not because you have to, but because the palace breathes easier when everything is just so. Historians still argue whether these night rounds were intended as actual inspections or simply as exercises in presence, a way of keeping the palace gently watched, gently tended. You think there's something more than that, a kind of whispered caretaking. As you near the northern wing, you slow down. This corridor is older, the stones more worn. You count your steps, 27 from the corner to the alcove with the carved screen, 28 to the empty doorframe where no door has ever hung. You pause, and then, very softly, you tap the wall twice with your knuckles. No one taught you this, but everyone does it. It's tradition. Superstition. A way to tell the spirits, we're still here. You're still welcome. But maybe don't startle anyone tonight. You move on. The last stop is the lantern tower. You climb the narrow stairs carefully, your lantern swaying. At the top, you light the signal flame. It's not for emergencies, just a tiny, steady glow that says everything is accounted for. As you descend, you pass a younger court lady climbing up. She's holding her lantern like it's too bright. You nod to her. She nods back. Nothing more. That's enough. Back in your hallway, you extinguish your candle, roll your shoulders, and return the lantern to its hook. Your hands smell faintly of wax and night air. You've walked the whole palace, or at least the parts you're allowed to. And now, at last, it is time to sleep, or at least To lie very still and pretend you don't have 1,000 thoughts still pacing inside your skull. But before that, you do one last thing. You take the wooden charm from your sleeve, the one from Mistress Choand, place it gently beside your basin, just in case. When the palace sleeps, you almost do too. As the moon glows on tiled rooftops, you find brief restand, wonder who dreams of you. Sleep doesn't come easily in the palace. Not because you're uncomfortable, your mat is warm. Your blanket light but sturdy, and the air still holds the faint scent of sandalwood from the hallway. No, it's not discomfort. It's momentum. You've spent all day keeping your body perfectly composed, your thoughts tucked under your tongue, your footsteps measured down to the millimeter, letting go of all that takes time. Still, the palace is quieter now, quieter than it ever gets during the day. The clatter of dishes is gone. No sweeping, no bells, no robes whispering across tile. Just the occasional creak of settling wood, a distant cough, and somewhere, the soft rustle of paper as someone turns a page in the dark. You lie down, pull the blanket over your knees, and exhale slowly. One long breath, then another, and just when you think you might finally drift off, you hear it. Footsteps, not hurried, not loud, just lingering. They pass your door, pause, and move on. Probably another lady on final duty. Probably. Or someone who walks these halls out of habit or memory. You don't get up to check. You never do. Instead, you turn slightly onto your side, face toward the wall. It's cool against your cheek. Tomorrow will come with its own list of duties. More folding, more bowing, more rumors to dodge and patterns to follow. You'll wake before sunrise again. You'll comb and pour and sew and kneel, and no one will write your name in any record. But maybe, just maybe, someone will wear something you folded and feel a little braver, or drink tea you poured and smile without knowing why, or read a message you helped fold and feel seen. Historians may never know what your name was, but you will have mattered, quietly, steadily, exactly the way palace life allows. And as your eyes grow heavier, you allow yourself one last indulgence, a dream, not of escape. That's too easy. Instead, you dream of a corridor with no end, lanterns swinging softly, and the sound of slippers moving across stone in perfect time. Because here, in this world of structure and secrets, rhythm is everything. And in sleep, you're finally allowed to break it. A crooked stitch, a ribbon tied wrong, quiet traces of self stitched into uniformity. You're not a troublemaker, not officially, not in a way anyone could point to and name. Your bows are deep enough, your steps even. You remember names and titles. You keep your sleeves clean and your tongue soft. But even within the neat rows of palace order, you've learned the subtle art of deviation. Today, you're hemming collars. The work is routine. Stack of ceremonial white robes, golden trim to be stitched evenly, 1 finger width of spacing, knots hidden on the inside. A task designed to feel invisible, even as it demands perfection. You begin, carefully threading the golden silk. The needle glides through fabric you know better than your own dreams. The rhythm settles in, your hands take over, and then, somewhere on the 4th collar, you leave 1 stitch off-center, just a thread's width, barely noticeable. But you notice. It's not defiance, It's not sabotage. It's a whisperer reminder to yourself that you're still in there. Beneath the rules. Beneath the linen. That there's still a person behind the protocol. You've done this before. A motif shifted slightly. A seam that curves too gently. A ribbon tied the wrong direction, only on the inside. Where no one sees but the one who wears it. Historians would never call it rebellion. But you know the difference between obedience and erasure. Someone walks by. You pose. Resume. One hand folds the finished robe into a neat square. The crooked stitch buried deep inside the lining like a secret. Later, you see a junior lady-in-waiting wearing the robe. She looks elegant, straight-backed. The hem sways just right. She doesn't know about the stitch. Why would she? But you do. And so do your fingers. It's a strange kind of companionship shared, only between the maker and the floor. You go to dinner without comment. You nod when spoken to. You smile when smiled at Frouve. And then, in the dark, when no one is watching, you tie a strip of spare thread around your wrist. A silent ribbon. No meaning but your own. And you sleep a little easier, knowing that somewhere out there, someone is wearing a perfect robe with one single stitch that doesn't quite belong. Just like you. The day everyone pretended not to notice. A broken sandal. A shattered bowland. The silence that held the story together. The sound is soft, barely there, but it travels like thunder down the hallway. Snap. A sandal strap gives way. She freezes. A junior attendant. Barely a week into her assignment. Halfway through, carrying a tray of inkstones. Her eyes dart side to side. Her foot stumbles. The tray tips, but somehow doesn't fall. You see it happen. So do others. No one reacts. Because reacting is dangerous. In a place built on control, attention is a form of power. And to call out a mistake, especially one as small as a broken sandalis, to shine a light too bright. It's better to look away. And so everyone does. The girl kneels, red-faced, and tucks the broken strap beneath her hem. She continues, barefoot, steps, whispering against the stone. No one laughs. No one helps. Later, in the laundry quarters, something else shatters a bowl. It falls from a table, ceramic to stone, splitting into clean-edged halves. You glance up from folding linens. Again. The air stills. You don't see who dropped it. No one claims it. A hand sweeps the pieces away like crumbs. And the room exhales as if nothing happened. This is the skill no one teaches you, the art of polite forgetting. Palace records won't mention it. Historians focus on hierarchy, etiquette, law. They won't tell you about the quiet pact among the overlooked, how you protect each other by pretending not to see. Not always, but enough. That night, the girl with the sandal wears a new pair. Too stiff. Not hers. But she walks carefully now. She's learned. You pass her in the hallway. You don't speak. She doesn't look up. But your gazes brush. For half a second, long enough, you keep walking. Because kindness, here, doesn't always mean helping. Sometimes, it means letting someone gather their dignity quietly, with no audience. Borrowed moments in the kitchen corner. You sneak roasted chestnuts and whisper dreams too wide for palace walls. You aren't supposed to be here, not exactly. The kitchen wing is meant for cooks, stewards, and those who know how to wield knives and woks with absolute silence. But the door was ajar. You had a half-finished errand. And your feet, well, they brought you here before you could reason your way out. The heat is welcome. After a morning of damp sleeves and cold corridors, the steam from the rice pots feels like a warm exhale. No one stops you. And there she is. She's crouched by the brazier, feeding it chestnuts. The outer shells blacken and hiss, and she rotates them with chopsticks like it's an art form. You don't call her your friend. That would be too bold, too modern, too vulnerable. But she's the one who warned you when the steward was in a bad mood. The one who shared her oilcloth when it rained. The one who once said your embroidery looked like it had breath. Without a word, she hands you a small napkin parcel. Inside are 2 chestnuts, still warm. You sit beside her, not too close, not facing each other. The unspoken code of palace girls. Comfort in proximity, not contact. You crack the chestnut open. It's sweet, burnt just slightly. Perfect. What would you be, she says after a moment. If not here, then you chew. Swallow. I don't know. Maybe a painter's apprentice. Someone who mixes colors. Huh. She nods. I'd be a ferryman's wife, she says. Braiding rope, tying up fish nets, smelling like river water. That sounds cold. Not colder than this place. Oh. You both smile briefly, carefully. A pot clatters nearby, and you both instinctively return to neutral faces. Palms flat, eyes distant, servants again. Historians don't write about this kind of rebellion. 2 girls stealing 5 minutes of warmth and roasted sweetness from a day of rigid duty. They don't record the dreams you fold inside yourself like delicate parchment. But you remember, and so does she. When the bell chimes, you rise. She tucks the rest of the chestnuts under a towel. You smooth your hair. Nothing was said that shouldn't be. Nothing was done that could be reported. But you leave with the taste of chestnuts still on your tongue, and a whisper of river mist in your thoughts. An extra bow for the ancestors. You clean a forgotten altar and feel seen by those no one remembers. No one remembers who was last assigned to this altar. The ancestral shrine near the outer courtyard sits mostly untouched, except during festival rites or official mourning. Today, however, your name appears on the steward's scroll beside 2 words. Clean altar. That's it. No explanation. No reason given. You nod, bow, and accept the cloth and bottle of scented oil as if this is perfectly ordinary. You walk alone through a passageway rimmed with cracked floor tiles. Moss clings gently to the stone. The air is cooler, here quieter, as if even the birds hesitate to chirp too loudly. The wooden doors creak softly as you push them open. Inside, stillness. It's not empty. The space is full of breathless weight. Dust floats in the sunlight like quiet thoughts. A thin spider's web trembles above a lacquer tray. A dried offering of persimmon slices has curled into itself. Forgotten. You kneel, not because anyone is watching, but because it feels like the room expects it. You begin your task, wiping gently around the incense burner, realigning brass bowls filled with nothing but memory, polishing the carved wood panels where names faded, but stubborn still whisper from the grain. You don't recognize any of the names. That's all right. You bow anyway. Not the official, ceremonial bow. A smaller one, slower. A moment of wordless acknowledgement. I'm here. I see you. I don't need to be seen in return. Historians often describe ancestral rites as grand, state-sponsored events bells, scrolls, and a dozen ranked officials. But no one writes about the quiet, private tending of empty shrines, about the way you feel a presence lean just slightly forward when the cloth grazes a neglected nameplate. You light one candle not because it's required, but because the room feels like it's waiting for it. The flame wavers gently, then steadies. The air warms. You finish. Then sit back for a moment. Not working, just being. The dust continues to float. The silence holds you like a soft hand. Then you rise. Bow again deeper this time, and leave. Outside, the sunlight feels different. You're not sure why. But as you pass beneath a ginkgo tree, one yellow leaf spins slowly downward and lands on your shoulder. And for reasons you can't explain, you don't brush it away. The quiet game of memory and names. You try to recall a vanished laugh, a crooked hem, and a nickname. No scroll records. There's no official list of names you've forgotten. No scroll that records them. No steward tracking the half-remembered. But sometimes, when your hands are still and your thoughts loosen like ribbon, they come drifting back. You're dusting the archive hallway to day one of the quieter tasks, the kind that doesn't demand much thinking, just soft cloth, polished wood, and silence thick enough to feel like memory. You pause beside the window. The light lands across a shelf at the perfect angle to show the outline of a handprint long since faded. You touch it, and suddenly you remember her. The girl with the tight hair knots and too small shoes. She helped you memorize the order of bowing in your first week. You think her name started with C-O, or maybe Sion. You're not sure. She was reassigned, and then never came back. You dust a little slower. Then comes the memory of the one who hummed when she sewed. Her cranes always looked like they were about to fly off the fabric. She left behind a folded fan. No one claimed it. You still remember the pattern, clouds stitched in grey on white silk. And another soft-voiced, dimpled, always laughing when no one was supposed to. She had a scar on her palm and a terrible memory for tea protocol. You try to remember what they called you. Not your official title. The nickname, the whisper someone used while adjusting your sash or sneaking you a leftover rice cake. You think it was Lantern Girl, maybe, because you always checked the lamps twice, even when it wasn't your job. It's strange how the people who knew you best never used your real name. Historians never document these things. They chart family lines and court factions, but not the hush of familiarity or the weight of vanished laughter. You tuck a strip of paper into your sleeve. Blank. Soft. No message written. Just something to carry. Just in case one of them remembers you. One day. And if they do, you want to be holding something however small to say. I remembered you first. So now, everything is still. The palace no longer needs your attention. The scrolls are rolled. The braziers are dimmed. Even the moon, that silent overseer, is slipping behind the rooflines, leaving only the soft hush of stars and breath. Let your shoulders fall just a little deeper now. That ache behind your knees from kneeling too long, it's gone. Your fingers no longer remember the feel of thread or paper. You've walked the long halls, tended the lilies, folded every corner just so. And now, at last, the day asks nothing more from you. The mat beneath you is no longer woven, straw it's a raft, drifting gently on the quiet waters of memory. The walls around you fade into fog, the kind that softens everything. Out there, Someone is still sweeping. Someone is still whispering over tea. But not you. Not tonight. Tonight, you are weightless. The scent of rice paper and candle smoke still lingers, but only faintly now. Like a familiar song you can't quite place. You are no longer a name, or a task, or a rank. You are simply breath, and warmth, and rest. Let your mind wander. Slowly, gently like the shadow of a cat slipping down a corridor. Let it find the quieter corners. Let it pause where the breeze comes through the paper door, just enough to cool your thoughts. And if any dreams come tonight, let them be small ones. A folded fan, a perfectly tied sash, a moonlit feather that floats just for you. Sleep now. You've done more than enough.